I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the founder of Measurable Advertising, no other than Mr. Jonathan Adams.
Hello.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Jonathan, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Certainly, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you for having me once again. My name is Jonathan Adams. I'm the founder of Measurable Advertising. We help businesses with their marketing, do a mixture of traditional, old school advertising, if you will, along with the modern digital and social media type medias as well. Um, I am actually a creative as well as a analytical mind. I have a background in engineering, so I come from that world, and I'm bringing that structure over into the advertising space. So,
Mr. Jonathan Adams, thank you so much for sharing miserable advertising to the world. What are your vision and mission as the founder of this company?
one of the things that I find with most businesses and advertising in general is people are not making their advertising accountable. In other words, they're not measuring the metrics of is it actually bringing me a return. There's lots of gurus and speeches out there and talk about, well, we need more impressions, we need more content, we need more brand, and there's definitely a place for that. But a lot of businesses don't know if they're actually getting a return. They're not tracking their results. And I hope to change that through my message.
Good luck for that, Mr. Jonathan. So, what are your struggles in the first year establishing this company?
Well, of course, with any new company, it's getting clients that align with your vision. So we're getting on board with that right now. Have a couple lined up that look to be promising. The other ones would be uh, refining the message in the market that you truly want to serve. You can't be all things to all people. So narrowing down on those few niches that we really want to be in, and that's where we're focusing right now.
Good luck for that, Mr. Jonathan. So, as a founder of Measurable Advertising, can you recommend a book that empowers you?
Yes, I can. When you first approached me, I thought, well, there's several books. Which one shall I recommend? But I think one of those that have influenced me most would probably be this book right here, Titan, by Ron Chernow. It's the biography of John D. Rockefeller. I think I've listened to the audio version at least twice, and I have the hardback version here. It's just a fascinating book, and is really all the stories in there have really just stuck in my mind. So it's one I want to share with others.
Did your opinion of him change as you progress through the chapters of Titan?
Well, I didn't actually know a lot about John D. Rockefeller before I started this book. We all associate him with Standard Oil, and we knew that he was a rich man. But beyond that, what do we really know? And uh, Ron, Mr. Chernow, when he did the biography, did a great job of setting up his early life and allowed you to understand why he was the way he was. He had a really difficult childhood because his father actually had two families and was basically a con man and would go out west on these runs for periods of months, and it'd be left with him, his siblings, and his mother. And since he was the oldest, he ended up having to basically be the man of the home and take care of his mother and his other siblings. So he didn't have the opportunity to have a regular childhood. He had to grow up real fast and do it now. And he did a great job of that. And that's one of the things that propelled him to greatness as an accountant, which is actually how he started, even at the age of 16.
What surprised you most about his life or character?
He was extremely frugal even after he was wealthy. And that didn't really surprise me so much as I found it ironic because I've seen that trait in other older men, um, especially growing back home in Kentucky. That was a trait that, lots of wealthy men had back there. He would, you know, a dime still mattered, even when he was the richest man in the country. And that stuck with him throughout his life, and it never left.
Mr. Jonathan, if you compare your company to the the book itself, which character you want to characterize?
Well, probably, well, obviously, it would be Johnny Rockefeller himself, but he had some associates there that really changed the business, um, that I could probably better relate with. One of the things that built Standard Oil to be so great is that he built basically the company through acquisition, and by doing so, he absorbed a lot of talent that was once competition. And when they worked together, they were able to accomplish so much more. And I think there's a lot of room for that in today's economy. And I think, given the economic environment we're probably about to enter, that may even be necessary.
Very well said, Mr. Jonathan. Very well said. And let's talk about the character and values. How would you describe Rockefeller's personality? Was he more ruthless or disciplined?
I'm going to say disciplined, very much disciplined. There's lots of characteristics of him being ruthless, but when I went through the biography, I really didn't see that from him as much as probably others would. I'll tell you a story. Um, in the book, it talks about Ida Tarbell, who wrote about him during that period, and her characteristics of him would be ruthless. However, if you looked at the way he did things, I'm going to say he was disciplined. And here's one of the stories I wanted to get to. When he would go to a potential acquisition or a competitor, basically another refiner there in Ohio, and say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to buy your refinery, or I'm going to run you out of business." People would say that was ruthless, but basically he would encourage them to take stock in Standard Oil. At the time, both parties were looking at that differently. Rockefeller knew that over time that stock was going to be worth way more than anything he would have paid for the actual facility or for the company he was buying. For those that were wise enough or in a position where they couldn't do anything else, they actually took him up on an offer. They all became extremely wealthy. But one of the ways he convinced them to do that is that he would actually take them back to Standard Oil's headquarters and open up the accounting books and show them how much it took him to get a drop of kerosene, the cost he actually had. And he proved to them, listen, you cannot compete against me because my cost is so low that I will keep driving you out until you will be no more. Join now or die. I considered what he did as discipline, not ruthless.
So, Mr. Jonathan, if you apply discipline in your company, which aspect of your company you will implement?
Follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. Every business is basically sales and marketing. And I think that's one of the things that I try to drive home to people is that you may be in the HVAC business, you may be in the plumbing business, you may be in the roofing business, you may be selling insurance. Whatever you do, you're actually selling and marketing. And follow up has to be the most disciplined part of your business. Um, over here to my right, I have, I think, 21 steps of follow up that's possible over the course of a year with an unsold client. And most sales don't happen until the seventh or eighth follow up. And people just quit way too early. I have a story that happened not too long ago. I was meeting with an individual. He was the owner of a company, and you could not get a hold of him. I ended up calling their office 5 or 6 times before finally I got a hold of him, and I ended up having multiple meetings in person. Had I stopped at the fifth follow up or the fourth, those business meetings would never took place.
Well, try and try and try until you succeed, people. Mr. Jonathan, do you believe his success with Standard Oil was more about innovation or exploration?
Probably exploration and timing. He originally started in the commodities business and took a chance with a friend, with an associate, to even go look at the oil fields. Took a gamble on that. His large wealth was accumulated during the age of kerosene. Then you have to think about the providence that took place, because as electricity started coming on board in different houses, it looked like Standard Oil kerosene would just go out the window. The entire market would be completely dead. But all of a sudden, at that same time, became the rise of the automobile and the waste product of the distillation process, which was gasoline, which many people back then would just let that flow off into the rivers. Now was valuable, and kerosene was not as valuable. So it was so fortuitous, so much providence happened for his wealth to carry on and jump markets. And that wouldn't have happened had he not been willing to explore those different avenues.
So, do you think your company is innovation or exploration too?
I'm going to say exploration. There's, I think Solomon wrote, "There's nothing new under the sun," and marketing is really no different. Today we think that it's lots of new innovation because we have AI, we have social media, but really there's only three main things in marketing: there's media, there's message, and there's the people that you're sending that message to. And yes, the media may change, the way we publish things may change, the way we broadcast things may change, but the message uh, will be the same. The people will be the same. And really, when you look at the media, that doesn't change that much either. So it's hard to say that one in any space is really innovative. That really takes a big leap. Um, it has to be really earth shattering stuff. So I'm gonna say probably more exploration.
Mr. Jonathan, was Rockefeller a visionary entrepreneur or monopolistic villain, or both?
I almost hate to call him a villain, but I'm gonna say the
Both.
way he's character. Yeah, I'm probably gonna say both. The way he's characterized in the book, uh, you're wanting to say entrepreneur, but there's definitely a monopoly aspect that you cannot deny. And but if you look at his writings and listen to the words and speeches that he gave, he I don't believe that he was insincere in his belief concerning the good of the monopoly. I honestly believe that he thought the monopoly was the best path forward for everyone, and that it was best under his tutelage. And it would be, uh, the world would be worse off if it were not for his monopoly. And they needed to get together under a monopoly, and he needed to drive it because it was going to be best for everybody. And I honestly believe he believed that.
Totally agree with you, Mr. Adam and Mr. Jonathan. So, if you given a chance to choose, which one do you want to belong to? A visionary entrepreneur or monopolistic villain?
I guess I'll take the I guess I'll take the visionary entrepreneur. No one really wants to be with the monopoly or the villain. Eh, and I guess I could say this too. We don't have very good monopolies nowadays. Most of the monopolies that we have are kind of disappointing. Uh, I can think of some of the large tech companies. You know, I don't think anyone's just really enthralled with Microsoft at the moment, that thinks that they're just doing the best job ever. Uh, I'm just using that as an example. There's other ones, but most monopolies today, I don't think they have the same style that Rockefeller had, if I can say that.
He's unique. So, let's talk about the family and personal life. How did the Rockefellers' upbringing influence his later values and business style?
Uh, well, I think he did really good with the first generation of his children. Um, Now, I mean, even if you look today, I mean, 5, 6 generations removed, they still have trust, and that wealth is held on. He did a lot of charitable work. I think over the years and through the generations that have passed, probably some of the families and the trust values have changed from what he originally would have had. I know that's probably been true through the 30s and 40s, um, and there's um, some theories as to why that happened and what they're into. But originally, I think he did the best he could. There's people that have done a lot worse and probably a lot better, but uh, I'd probably give him a C on that one.
Certainly. What did you think of his relationships with his wife and children?
I think his relationship with his wife and children was really good. Through the book, they mentioned that by the time he got up into his mid 30s, he was actually kind of working half days. He had a wire that actually went from his home to headquarters while he still lived in Ohio, and he would spend a lot of time at home in the garden with the children, playing with them outside and inside. And he seemed to be a very caring father. And he seemed to take really good care of his wife. I think his experience growing up as a child and his father being absent and having a second family, basically, somewhere else, really heavily influenced the way he treated his own family. And he didn't want to be anything like that. And I think that showed in his home life.
Mr. Jonathan, as the founder of Measurable Advertising, what will be your short term and long term goals in your
Uh,
business?
Short term goals is probably to still work with clients. I think long term goals will probably be to do more large speeches and teaching in larger audiences. But for right now, short term, I'm still wanting to work with clients. I still find that enjoyable.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Jonathan. And what do you think modern billionaires compared to Rockefellers in terms of influence and ethics?
Really, right now, I think probably the only comparison you would have today to Rockefeller would be Elon Musk. And that's really kind of apples and oranges because Musk is off into so many different things. Uh, and that's brought about partly because of the way his mind works, but definitely his work ethic is probably the same as Rockefeller's. Now, Rockefeller, unlike Musk, was singularly focused. I mean, like a laser. Um, he had one goal, one objective. It was known throughout his entire life, and it did not change. It was a solitary rock. It would be like had Musk taken PayPal and never left and just kept driving it until PayPal basically became a reserve currency of the world. That would be what Musk would have had to have done to have been on the same level as to what Rockefeller did in his time, in my estimation.
So, Mr. Jonathan, will you be Elon Musk or Rockefeller in the future?
I think I like Rockefeller better.
In what sense?
I do like the way he was disciplined. I do like the way that he was singularly focused. Uh, Even I struggle with that. I think it's something we all struggle with nowadays. I think most people have multiple projects they want to pursue because there's so much more to do now. Perhaps that's a byproduct of the time that we live in versus the time that he lived in. But I really do aspire to be like him in the fact that he had one goal, one focus, and it was constantly pursued without fail.
Indeed, Mr. Jonathan, very well said. Beautifully articulated. What will be your advice for those people out there who want to be an entrepreneur?
I think they need to be clear on what business they're getting into. Um, as I said before, they need to understand that their business is going to be selling and marketing. It's not going to be about the actual service or product that they are producing. Um, they need to get real clear on that. They also need to set up guardrails to ensure that they stay focused and disciplined, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're no longer uh, beholden to a corporation, a boss, guidelines, or anything else. You have to be all those things. And it's very difficult to wear both hats at the same time. So getting organized in a way that works for you, that you will stick with, uh, being your boss for 1 hour the night before and laying out your tasks for the next day so that the next day you're your own employee, works pretty well. You have to live in dichotomy, and that's difficult for any of us to do. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you better get ready for it.
Totally agree, Mr. Jonathan. What lessons, positive or cautionary, can entrepreneurs today take from Rockefeller's story?
I think one of the things that he was in constant pursuit of was efficiency and greatness. Two stories that illustrate that in the book. One, when he was a young man and still had the first refinery, he would go down to where they were actually soldering the tops of the kerosene cans on top of the containers. And he asked the guy that was doing it, he counted the actual drops of solder they used. And he said, that's 43. Well, 42 work. And then he kept going down all the way till 39. At 39, the can started to leak. He said, well, 40 it is. And so every single drop of solder was precious to him. And he even still carried that on to when he was super wealthy. When I think they moved their headquarters to New York, he'd actually go down to the accounting room and walk by all the accountants. And as they had their ledger books open, he could just catch out of the corner of his eye, just lean over somebody's shoulder and point at something and say, you need to look at that. And he immediately knew what it was, just right off the bat, to a point to where people were just awestruck at his ability to do that. So he detail never left his eye, and I think that was very impressive.
Indeed, one of the character of successful entrepreneur. But before we wrap up our discussion, Mr. Jonathan, I'm inviting you to please do listen to one of my audiobooks, people available on Audible. And my Book 101 Review, Volume 3 Suggestions, Book 101 Review, Volume 2 Selected, and Book 101 Review, Volume 1 Highly Recommended. These are my product of my first season on Book 101 review. And of course, one of my self-help books, Treasure of Existence, Weaving the Tapestry of Life. Stand tall, stand together, breaking the chains of believing, and life is too short, a journey of discovery, fulfillment, and joy. And one of my climate change book, Earth Fever, Unraveling Climate and Our Race to Restore Balance, available on Audible and one of the bestsellers. So, Mr. Jonathan, if you ask Rockefeller one question after reading Titan, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I would probably ask him to revisit one of his statements and expound upon it. In the book, there is a quote from him when he was an older man, where he said, all the nights that I laid awake thinking about how it would turn out. And this is referring back to when he was a younger man, consolidating all the oil refineries, going into huge, massive amounts of debt. He said, all the nights I laid awake wondering how it turned out. All the success and the wealth was not worth the anguish of those nights. And I, I would want him to explain that a little bit more. And I think that would be the question I have to ask. And I'm not sure why Ron Chernow included that saying in the book. I think because there's several reasons. Number one, all of us would like to think that he thought that way. The other one is that made him more human, and that speaks to our own fears about will wealth change us, or is success worth pursuing? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the price worth the pain? So, would that have still been his statement had he been half as successful? Because the effort that he made to be as successful as he was, that same effort's required to be less successful, if that makes sense. Because whether I make 10 million or 100 million, at that point, it's just the multiplication factor. It's not the amount of effort. So I would have to quiz him on that one right there, because I think that one's got so many layers to it. I would really want to unpack it.
Mr. Jonathan Adams, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to your world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your company, Measurable Advertising?
Yes, certainly. They can come and visit our website at measurableadvertising.com, or they can go to measurableadvertising.com/services to find out more about what we do. There will be a place for them to schedule a call, or to even sign up for daily emails to learn about marketing that could be successful and help them be successful. So,
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Jonathan Adams, because if you support him, more and more and more empowering business to come. Mr. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time.
thank you. I certainly appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.